don't have gold. I got diamonds in the coal, and that's you.
Hello, my name is Chris, and this is The Eye and the Heart, and today I'm going to talk about narrative psychology, why it's important and why it's useful, and why I work with it as a narrative psychologist, as opposed to all these different things that you can do in psychology. Here we go. There's a lot of focus happening right now in culture and in media, all about anxiety and depression and confidence and trauma, and a lot of people that aren't trained to talk about these things are talking about them. It's called therapy speak. And it's kind of problematic because it's incredibly important how we use language to talk about these different things. One of the tenets of narrative psychology is, what's the story? What's the story that you have about yourself and about the world and about other people? So when we talk about stories, we inherently know that they are incredibly important. Everything you do in your free time is either listen to music, watch Netflix, read a book, or talk to people about what's happening with you. We are meaning-making machines. We cannot stand in front of another person or experience something without turning it into a story. That's what we're all about. And we've got stories and myths that are archetypal, that go back thousands of years. Carl Jung worked with stories and archetypes and symbols and all of that stuff. And I imagine that you can't take a look at a tarot card or a movie poster without already creating a story about who the main character is, what the plot might be. We're just designed to do this. It's built in. It's hardwired into us, right? But what can happen is that lives are very complicated. We've got so many different experiences, right? If I do a little graph here, this is your life. It's on a blank sheet of paper. You've got all of these little dots that I'm doing. These are all the experiences you had. That's the time I peed myself in 3rd grade. This is the time that I hooked up with that really pretty girl. This is the time that I failed math. This was me becoming a psychologist. This is me almost getting in a car wreck, but handling it beautifully. Anyway, whatever these experiences are, you've got a bunch of them. This is your life, right? It's all these experiences. I'm sure you've had a billion more. What we end up doing is, because we're meaning-making machines, is we end up doing this. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. That's my life. That's my story. That's who I am. What narrative psychology is trying to do is say, all right, fine, that's your story. Now, what's the story? Is it problematic or is it okay? So an okay story might be, yes, I've failed in the past, but I know I've got the resources and the intelligence and the support to do what I need to do and move forward. A problematic story might be, I'm just not good at these things. Other people know how to do them. I'm an alien and I cannot deal. Right? So that's a problematic story. And with a problematic story like that, you may experience symptoms of anxiety and depression, clearly, and for good reason. But the truth is that there are multiple different stories. You've got a little one here, you've got a little one there, you've got this one, it kind of interlinks with that one. I mean, they're all over the place and they're happening all the time. All of this, in narrative psychology, is what we find out through the first sessions. Like an investigative journalist, I become very curious about what's happening in your life and what the story is. What's the story, man? What's the story? And I try to find the story like a 1940s investigative reporter with a lot of curiosity. And you are the expert on your life, not me. Because if you say, I'm experiencing anxiety, what is anxiety? Well, it's something that psychologists research. We've been reading papers about it. We talk about it. We talk about what might fix it. We talk about all that stuff, right? We're the experts. But psychologists can't change your life. Psychologists can't change your story. They can work with you. They can help you. They can even be sort of wounded helpers who have gone through it themselves and are now working with you. But this whole model of showing up to somebody with a lot of knowledge and he's just going to tell you what to do, I'm sorry, but that doesn't fly. It doesn't really fly. It doesn't really help. And that's the issue. Okay. So what does help? If the person has to get into it themselves and they have to change their story, how do we go about it as narrative psychologists? Well, first of all, we can accept that the story happened. And we can accept that through that story that you've built, there may be some problems happening now in your life. I mean, that's probably why somebody's coming into therapy to begin with, right? They're coming in and saying, I get angry too much, or I feel anxious, for example. We can take anxiety as one. So a narrative psychologist would start to externalize the problem of anxiety. They would start to say, okay, so when you're feeling afraid, what does it feel like? And we'll build up adjectives and we'll build up nouns and we'll start to create a character of anxiety. Everybody experiences anxiety, by the way. It's very normal. It's the majority of your life is in that state. This idea that it's all happiness and that anxiety is sort of a minor part of it. This is a fictionalized, again, it's a story. It's a fictional version of what it's like to be human. We're not designed to be happy all the time. We're designed to find problems and fix them. So let's say we externalize a character that is your anxiety, and that character we're going to call Piss Pot. We've given him, this is a terrible drawing, I'm sorry, but we've given him a voice, we've given him a characterization, we've called him Piss Pot. We're working with something external from you. So why is that important? Well, in narrative psychology, we don't diagnose depression, we don't diagnose anxiety, we don't diagnose anything, because we believe that you're the expert and that your experiences of fear or sadness or whatever it is actually have value, and that your experiences are unique to you. So really turning you into the expert about this is the best way forward. But what we do after we've externalized this, and we do that by really focusing that this is a problem area that's outside of us that we can now focus on. This is a character. If a little kid comes up and says, I'm bad at math, and that's why he's not showing up to math class, he's skipping math class. Okay. We can talk about, well, what is it about math that you find difficult? And he goes, well, I feel like I can't do it. Okay? And when you feel like you can't do it, what's your immediate response? I want to run away. Okay, run away like what? Is that run away like hide in a corner or bolt to the door? Because sometimes it can be okay to run away. What's wrong about this running away? And he can say, well, I feel ashamed. Okay, so it's ashamed, right? Now we've focused in on that. And you can say, well, when you're not good at math, what happens if you're bad at it? Why would it be an issue even to fail at math? And the kid can say something like, well, I'm ashamed to fail at math because my parents might think that I'm stupid. Okay, so now we've got ashamed and stupid. So when he's going into math class now, he feels ashamed and stupid already because he's bad at math. And then for a child, you may do something like, well, what does that look like? What kind of animal does it look like? And he's saying, well, it looks like a worm. Okay, so we've got an ashamed worm. Okay. And that comes up when we know that math class is going to start at 3:30. And now we can work on something because we've got a problem outside the person. We can say, when the worm, the ashamed worm, comes up, what does he want? What does he want to do? And he can say, well, he wants me to run away and he wants me not to do math. And he goes, okay, well, has this caused any problems in your life? Has this caused any... And obviously, yeah, that's why they're there in the therapy to begin with, right? So every problem has a life support system. There's something keeping it alive, whether it's ideas or whether it is something more, maybe it's coming from the outside, like a family member. Maybe it's coming from a sibling, or it can come from so many places. Maybe it's something that we ourselves are feeding in order to avoid something else. But it's important to understand where the life support systems come from. And then we need to start identifying, what are your actual opinions about math? Do you think math is important? Because this guy, being the expert on his ashamed worm, is now also the expert on why this is bad to be an ashamed worm. So we're really putting the client into focus. The therapist so far has done nothing. Not really, So what we're looking at then is identifying the problem, externalizing it, characterizing the problem, and then deciding what our opinions really are about math. Do we need to be good at math? Do we want to be good at math? What is it that's the problem here? Because if the kid wants to be good at math, well, we can get a tutor, or we can get something else. Or if that's not an option, we can dedicate time, we can find somebody that is, we can get help, we can speak to teachers. There's lots of things that we can do. But if it's just an idea about themselves that's blocking them from going and progressing, that's where the problematic story comes from. Now, the way that I would do this with adults is I wouldn't just create a character out of the ashamed worm or something that hates math. What I would do is I would actually look at some archetypes within myth and human story, things that have been around forever: the jester, the benevolent emperor, and I would look at these different archetypes and see which story are you playing out, and which story is being problematic, and which story is positive. And we try to get into a situation where we can at least identify those things and externalize them, so you understand when you're going into that behavior what is driving you. And that's individual from person to person, and may take a couple of sessions to figure out. But after that, we can start to develop our own beliefs. And the most important thing is that we can take what we have here, and we can start to develop minor stories that have happened. It's like, I was a failure, and it's like, okay, you were a failure, but did you fail over here? No, I didn't fail over here, so that's a success. I'm good at this. And we start figuring out where your values are. Because if you're a banker, but you really value nature and you never get to see it, it's an issue, right? So we need to figure out where those values are, sort of figure out a life path for you. And when we're moving forward from that point on, and this is the best part about narrative psychology, is it's a huge focus on the person being their own therapist, but also the future and positivity. And what we're really trying to do is move people out of a state where they are ruminating on a story again and again and again, and start to create new narratives. Little heroes is what I call them. We put little heroes into your life, and they can come from everywhere. We talk about it as a sort of a map where you can be a very strong man, but you can also be weak. You can be all of these varying things happening together. These storylines can happen simultaneously because we're not one-sided, black and white. People are a multitude of stories, and we just need to make sure that one of these problematic stories doesn't get out of control and dominate the narrative. And that's why I say in Eye in the Heart is that what we're doing is changing the narrative. There's a quote that I'd like to leave with, I'd like to end this video on, and it says, "You're not the problem is the problem." The reason that I do this is because I really wanted to work with something that I thought I was creating at the time called common sense psychology. And the reason why I'm doing that is I think people are focusing a lot on problems and little on the future, and a little, like in positive psychology, they talk about how we're really trying to bring in our strengths, what makes us beautiful and amazing as people, and bring that to the forefront. And I think the reason why that's so difficult to do for people is stories. We've got stories about ourselves that hold us back. That's not for me, that's for other people, right? And that idea of externalizing a problem and understanding that the person themselves, even if they have some maladaptive behavior because of some trauma or anything else, is not the problem. It's not what's in you, you know. But the creative process of creating a new story, of moving forward with something in that way, that's the magical part for me. That's the part that I'm really excited about. It's creative. I mean, a lot of this has to do with how we express ourselves, what kind of stories we have. That's the part that I love to focus on with people, and that's the part that I want to explore in this channel. What are the different narratives that we can make about ourselves without being unrealistic, and take this journey with you. And I want to thank you now for just this first video with me. And if you know anybody that wants to get a free session with narrative psychology with me, I'm open to that now. So come on and join in and get your friends and family involved, and let's have some fun. Let's figure out what stories we're playing, why, and what stories we want to be playing. You can get a free 20-minute introductory session with me, and then we can start to create a map. And if you want to continue with me, you can also do that. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope this explains, at least to some extent, what narrative psychology is. If not, I will be making more videos about it in the future. All the best to you, and sayonara. Ciao.